So this is the portion of the show that we alluded to before with Embrace the Debate. It's going to be a debate about, each week we're going to have a topic that you see either through First Take or whatever, like Undisputed. There's going to be kind of a generated topic that comes from either one of the leagues that we've been talking about, and it's just going to be controversy and ones that we're kind of far apart on, and we know that we're far apart on, so we're gonna kind of take the floor here. So this week's topic was, who is responsible for the Clippers meltdown? We're a little late on this, we know, but I think in light of the Doc Rivers fire hire, I think that this topic needs to be talked about because we all had them in at least the Western Conference Finals,
right.
At least.
Right.
So it was very unforeseen.
Especially up 3-1.
Up 3-1, it was just a collapse of epic proportions. So
who's your take at the most, I guess, person to blame?
yeah, my pie chart looks like this. My pie chart looks like 90% Pandemic P. Pandemic P, oh my goodness, man. I don't know how you as an NBA superstar, all-star, quote unquote, can show up in the playoffs knowing how much your team gave up to you, for you,
So
knowing that they're relying on you as a second option or even a first option at points.
Yeah.
And you show up and your 3 out of the 6 losses that came in this year's playoffs came when you scored less than 15 points.
Wow.
Less than 15 points. You had 3 games in losses that you scored less than 15 points. And when you were doing well, you still lost those games. So why, are you taking away from the offense? Are you putting up too many shots? Are you thinking of yourself as the number one guy when really everyone else knows it's Kawhi? Or really everyone else knows that it's got to be a team-affiliated effort for the Clippers to move forward. So there's that, and he only shot 40% from the field 3 times the entire playoffs. You're on the biggest stage. You are, like I said, a quote-unquote all-star, quote-unquote superstar, former All-NBA team.
You could say he's a top 10 player too. Well, not anymore.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that
Yeah.
now, but he was he was definitely a top 10.
Yeah.
I think ever since he was a top 3 MVP candidate last year. He was 3rd in voting.
Yeah.
It
He had a
makes-
great year.
Yeah, it makes absolutely no sense that that people first of all call you Playoff P. Who gave you that nickname? Who that person fired?
I saw the thing. It was like Charles Barkley said, "You can't call me championship Chuck. And you call him playoff P."
Yeah, oxymorons.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense. Doesn't match up. And you've exited in the first round of the playoffs, or at least the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, and every year you've been there,
Well, no,
except for
with the Pacers.
With the Pacers. That year that they took on the Heat in the Western Conference Finals. At some point, you got to look yourself in the mirror and say, I got to be better. I got to be better. What am I doing that is, because your team all thought that y'all were going to the championship. Remember when y'all were talking about Dame Lillard and Cancun on 3? That you were participating in that. I mean, Pat Bev is Pat Bev, but you participated in that as well. You can't talk all that noise and then not show up.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of that, and it doesn't fall on Doc because Doc didn't think that you were going to be that bad either.
Yeah.
So Pandemic P takes a majority of the blame. I think the other part that kind of goes with that is the lack of point guard production. You brought in Reggie Jackson. You know what Pat Bev is. He's a defensive guy who can occasionally make some shots here and there, but he's not really an offensive guy.
Yeah. Well, that's where they got Lou Williams though. I mean, he didn't really perform to his performance.
He's a 2 guard too.
Yeah, but
you gotta.
He has the ball in his hands though.
Yeah, he has the ball in his hands, but the point guard is supposed to be the facilitator, the playmaker, and you're supposed to produce some sort of collective effort on the offensive end of the floor.
I've never been a fan of Patrick Beverley. I don't even think he's a starting point guard.
No, neither do I.
He comes in to play defense.
No, and his his best feature of his game is his trash talk.
Yeah.
So I don't really see.
He's not a starting point guard.
You have to go out in free agency and try to find someone to fill that role a little bit more than what you got from those two guys in the
Right.
playoffs.
A pass first point guard.
A pass first point guard, or a point guard that can give you 15 points a game. One of those two, I think, would put you guys over the hump. Lemon Pepper Lou, I hate to say it, is not gonna bring you your third option every single game.
What about Montrezl Harrell?
Montrezl Harrell is
He had like 20 a game last year, and Lou Williams had like 20 a game last
he's
year.
reigning sixth man of the year, yeah, but that's not your go-to guy on offense. Like you're gonna have a lot of games that Montrezl
When he
Harrell
gets rebounds.
where he's getting rebound, he's playing defense, he's playing hard, he's guarding some of their best bigs. Like that's what he's there for. He's not there to create offense.
Yeah. Well, but I think though Lou Williams, if you have him as a third option, that's pretty good. He's a bucket. He scores on anyone versus anyone. He can score at will. So I think if you have him as a third option,
But you think you want him as your third option moving forward, like in the next 3-5 years?
wouldn't be opposed to it.
Really?
Yeah.
I see. I have a problem because first of all, he's aging. What is he? 34. He was.
But
He played with Allen Iverson when he was on the Sixers, so it's been a while.
But I think even age is not going to be a huge factor on him, just because he's never been crazy athletic. He's just been a scorer. I don't think age is going to be a huge factor for him.
But you saw that kind of that glimpse of age in the last couple playoff games where he didn't really do what we're accustomed to seeing Lou Williams do, and it was more often than not, which was weird because it just came out of nowhere. It hit everybody over the head.
Right, because he'd never really been like playing bad per se.
Yeah, he wasn't really ever a bad performer, or he couldn't really shoulder any of the blame.
Yeah.
And I think this really caused him to look himself in the mirror as well.
All right, so Paul George, terrible. And the fact that him and Kawhi Leonard scored 0 points in the fourth quarter, that is as much as me and you scored in the fourth quarter.
Yep.
Of Game 7.
Yep.
That is terrible. 0 points in the fourth quarter, and then
Quite frankly, everyone in this vicinity, your mom, your dad, your sisters, all
everyone,
match the same with Kawhi Leonard.
an unborn baby had as many points. Like that's insane.
Donald Trump.
Oh my god. He could have went out and scored a bucket probably. Jesus Christ.
His 2K My Player looks great.
Oh,
That is
0 points. So with that being said, I would say Paul George is more to blame. I'm not going to debate that because he was terrible. And with everything they gave up, so many first round picks in the Thunder.
Yeah, we forgot to even mention the Thunder.
Right.
The Thunder gave up Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Danilo Gallinari, and a bunch of 5 first round picks. And the Thunder.
And Chris Paul, you can say Chris Paul.
Yeah, and the Thunder overachieved.
Yeah, completely.
Overachieved, and I think, like, you got to think about, like, what if they had them? What if Shai and Danilo was there with Paul George, or you got a different piece with Paul George? What would
Well,
they
you
do?
couldn't have got them without.
Well, yeah. But, like, what I'm saying is, say the Clippers went and made a move to get Paul George or another superstar to go with Kawhi Leonard. Would they have been better off without Paul George?
I don't think. And they're still a better team with Paul George, even though he was terrible. But it'd be interesting to see because you'd have Kawhi now. You'd have you're saying they'd still have Gilgeous-Alexander.
Mhm.
They'd still have all their first round picks. They'd still
Gallinari.
yeah.
And
And still-
they had cap space to go out and get it.
It'd be a similar way
complimentary piece.
of Kawhi on the Raptors, right?
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
You would get a lot of vibes of what Kawhi on the Raptors was, and
Sure,
with
yeah.
that being said, should
Yeah.
Kawhi have stayed on the Raptors?
I never really thought he should have left.
Yeah,
In the East with the Raptors,
with the Raptors and how they were this year without him, they were just fine.
Yeah.
So imagine them with it. They could have repeated. They could have represented the Eastern Conference. So those are things to think about with the Clippers. Is like there's so many parts of it that just had so many chemistry that caused so many chemistry issues. It was just a dumpster fire.
yeah. Also, I want to say, Kawhi Leonard is their best player. He is their leader. I don't think he's never been a vocal guy. He's never been really like.
He's a fun guy.
Yeah. He's kind of like he leads by example, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
but he needed to do something. He needed to light a fire on them. He needed to do something. As a leader, you need to be like you see LeBron. He's always like he elevates players around him. I don't know if I can say that for Kawhi. And so I think Paul George obviously is more to blame, but I think Kawhi Leonard has a lot to do with him not elevating the guys around him and not kind of saying, you know what, I'm not losing this game. Give me the ball. I'm going to go off.
Yeah, I would counter that and say that it was more Kawhi should shoulder more of blame for Game 7 than the overall meltdown of,
Well, no, yeah, that's
of
true.
the team.
Okay, yeah, no.
Because Kawhi performed. Kawhi was there.
Oh, he was great.
He was
He
there.
was the usual self.
Yeah,
Exactly.
but in Game 7, you can't say that Kawhi is in conversation for best player in the world anymore. That went right out the window with Game 7.
Yep.
That was, so that's my one thing with Kawhi. But the reason that I didn't really put him as part of the pie chart along with Doc Rivers is that he did everything he could do up to Game 7.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'd say, okay, so we'll say Paul George is the single most important. Like he's
He's
the reason.
he's the key part to that whole equation.
Yeah.
Is that
But I would say Game 7, that was Kawhi's fault. You have, as the best player, you have to say, I'm not losing Game 7.
Yeah. One more thing that I think we have to add to the pie chart just a little bit: load management.
Yeah.
You saw a lot of before the
Before the bubble.
before the bubble, before the hiatus. You saw a lot of Kawhi sitting out games, Paul George sitting out games. They're both sitting out games, and so you could say that they didn't really have a lot of opportunity to connect chemistry-wise as a team before the bubble. So that is another thing to have for consideration. Because load management I think is a joke in general. I think load management,
absolutely hate it.
it's bad for ratings. It's bad for the NBA. It's bad for their teams. There's
Never
no positive for it except for the individual that's sitting out.
Not at all.
All right.
I mean, so we were pretty much in agreement. We got a little disagreements there, but that was
Yeah.
an interesting topic to talk about.
Yeah, I think in coming weeks we're going to find more and more topics to kind of expand upon with this segment, and I think debates are going to get better and better.
Yeah.
So that was just a good starting point to really get that segment going, because I think that's going to be a good cornerstone to what the show kind of represents as a whole.
Could not agree more. So I think want to do the rankings segment now.
We got two sets of rankings this week. We got MLB players to watch in the playoffs, and we have the NFL and the underperformers through week 3. So we're gonna touch on the MLB players to watch in the playoffs first. I'll let you go first.
Okay. I think I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna say my 10.
Okay.
Yeah. Number 1, Fernando Tatis Jr. He has been an animal. Number 2, Mookie Betts. I loved him with the Red Sox. I do not like him on the Dodgers. He's still one of the best players in the league. Ronald Acuna Jr. He is a young up-and-coming. He's a star. He's him and Freddie Freeman, who actually is on my list as well, are two. If the Braves aren't going to do anything, it's going to be on the backs of those two. DJ LeMahieu, mentioned him before. He's been
They gave him Albert Pujols as nickname.
He has been an animal.
Yeah, I don't know what has gotten into him, what they're putting in his protein powder.
Hitting the machine.
Yeah, I don't know. We know baseball steroids could be involved. I don't know what happened, but anyway, I love it.
Yeah.
Love it. It's great.
Clayton Kershaw. Great first game. 13 Ks, 8 innings pitched. We're not accustomed to seeing that in the playoffs, so I'm curious to see if that is going to continue. I mentioned Freddie Freeman. Alex Bregman. We've talked about the Astros. I think
MVP candidate last year.
exactly. If the Astros are going to win, it's going to be on the back of him. Also, Altuve is another one. But Bregman, I think, is huge for him. Garrett Cole, $300 million. We'll see what he's going to do. He's great first game. So let's see how he continues to be in the postseason. Manny Machado, he's been coming into form. Him and Tatis Jr. Curious to see how they're going to go up against the Dodgers. And then I wanted to get a Ray in there, the Tampa Bay Ray, because they're the number 1 team in the AL. So I put Blake Snell, former Cy Young winner, to see how it does.
Okay. So Tatis being your number 1 player to watch this whole postseason.
Yeah, I would. My rankings are a little bit kind of over the place, but I'm going to say number 1 would be Tatis Jr.
Okay. So I'm gonna take the approach of going from 10 up because
Okay.
I have rankings like based on the significance of what these players have at stake.
Okay, I like that.
So I have number 10. I have DJ LeMahieu. He's gonna reach superstar level if he keeps at his current pace in the playoffs, and especially being in the Bronx, being a part of the Yankees organization, he's going to be potentially. I don't want to say Jeter-esque. I don't.
I mean, it's not.
I don't really know how else you put it.
Yeah.
But obviously I don't think he's at Jeter's level as far as like
Just an overall player.
icon wise.
Yeah.
But he's putting up Jeter quite type numbers, and he's not a big power guy, but he's getting on base, he's getting hits. He batted 364 through 60 games, and he came through with probably the most clutch hit we'll see in the playoffs to this point. So I think you got to keep an eye on him and see if he keeps at this pace for the New York Yankees. Number 9. This might come as kind of a surprise. I have Jake Lamb. Jake Lamb from the Oakland A's.
Oh, yeah.
He's got to fill in some pretty big shoes for Matt Chapman. Matt Chapman is top 5 third baseman in the game right now. Probably top 2 next to Arenado for fielding third baseman. And it's big. They're the second seed in the AL. There's a lot of expectations in that dugout. Is he going to deliver, or are they going to feel the effects of Matt Chapman not being there? So I think that if he shows up, he was a starter for the Diamondbacks for a number of years. If he shows up, I don't think they miss a beat. I think they continue how they were in the regular season. If he doesn't show up, you're gonna feel that void, and you're gonna see a lot of losses in the column for them, and they're gonna struggle and offensively. So Jake Lamb at number 9. Number 8, Aroldis Chapman. Historic big game below her.
God.
You have Game 7 of the 2016 World Series. You have the ALCS last year. He has been a part of some iconic walk-offs. So I didn't get a chance to talk about his splitter before. You got a guy throwing 100 plus miles an hour with a nasty slider. So you either got a coin flip, and now you add a splitter. So I think that's going to be a big game, a big part of his game moving forward. And I think maybe you'll see a better result in big games for Chapman. He closed out Game 3 for them this past week, and he looked good. He looked really good. Gary Sanchez, different story. But catchers tend to say that they hate catching Aroldis Chapman. I can understand why. But I think you gotta keep a lookout and see if he blows another big game and he keeps that kind of narrative around him that he's not a big game performer. But I think there's a lot of room there for improvement for him in the playoffs. At number 7. Number 7, I got Aaron Judge. We got 3 Yankees at the bottom, part of the top 10. Which Judge are we going to see? Are we going to see the power threat Judge, the MVP candidate Judge, the 50-plus home run Judge that we saw a couple years ago? Or are we going to see the Judge that strikes out 3 times a game and just doesn't do well against postseason pitching and doesn't deliver as the face of the franchise that we've expected him to be? So I think that's a big thing to look for moving forward. Number 6, Mookie Betts. Mookie Betts is going to be looked at. He's in LA. The Dodgers are the favorite. He's the new guy in town. Where do the Dodgers go from there? Does he take the Dodgers over the hump? Because they've been on the brink of the World Series for the past 2-3 years.
Yeah.
Maybe with the
Maybe
exception
more.
of last year a little bit. But I think either he's going to be ridiculed for a very long time if the Dodgers do anything short of a World Series this
Yeah.
year. So I think,
Especially this year.
because if a year is going to be for the Dodgers, it's going to be this year with the way that everything is shaped up to be so far. So I got Mookie Betts there. I got your number 1 at number 5. no experience for Fernando Tatis.
Mm-hmm.
He has no playoff experience. He hasn't. The Padres don't really have a lot of experience in big games in general.
Yeah.
So
They
as
haven't been in the playoffs in so long.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact.
so with Tatis being the face of that team, more or less, what do we get out of him? Do we get the kind of like young player jitters that you see in the playoffs from some guys sometimes, where you got regular season performers, they go about it like they've always gone about it, and then they shrivel up in big moments during the playoffs? Or are you going to see moments like you saw in Game 2, where he hits the big home run, he makes great plays in the field, and he's really a catalyst for the Padres' success?
Mm-hmm. I think you could see something too similar to him and Luka Doncic. How Luka is still he had not really performed. He was only his second year in the bubble, and he goes off. Well, this year in total, but with the national spotlight on in the bubble, he went off, and now he's a perennial top 5 player in the NBA.
Right.
Tatis Jr., similar situation. Padres, he's been in the spotlight, but now like everyone's watching. Can he make that jump? So I'm curious to see what he does.
And somebody I think has a really similar situation is Tyler Glasnow.
Oh yeah.
Tyler Glasnow is looked at as one of the marquee arms in the league right now. He has disgusting off speed. He throws gas. He is must-watch TV whenever his start is up. But same thing, no playoff experience, young guy. Where does he stand in the ladder of postseason performers? Is he the jittery rookie, or is he the PTP primetime player? So I'll be interested to see, especially with the Rays being the #1 seed, where does he go from there?
Especially in the Yankees.
Yep. Number 3, I have Freddie Freeman.
Yep.
Freddie Freeman is likely your NL MVP. For me, that came out of nowhere because I thought if anybody was going to be MVP from the Braves, it was going to be Acuna.
Yeah.
But can he continue to ride that hot streak of his MVP caliber year? Can he lead them to a potential World Series as well? I think that would really be something to look at moving forward for the Braves. Is really who's the main guy? Who's the guy that's going to take you to the World Series? Do they have a guy on that roster to bring them to a World Series? Are they missing something? They're definitely missing pitching. They're definitely missing pitching. But offensively, who is that guy? And I think Freddie Freeman is going to be looked at, especially if he takes home this MVP this year, as that guy. But speaking of the Braves, who I have at number 2 is Ronald Acuna Jr. You've seen him kind of have playoff moments, per se. Like, he's had a couple, but it hasn't really amounted to anything.
Yeah.
It hasn't really done anything for them. And you saw last year where he messed up he pimped the home run that didn't go out. He pimped the home run that didn't go out, and I think an elimination game or a break, like the penultimate elimination game for them, that really cost them because he didn't get the third. They didn't get that run that inning. He's got a lot on his shoulders to carry as well for the Atlanta Braves franchise.
Mm-hmm.
But I think number 1, not even close. I think that he has so much at stake that it puts everybody on a step below him on this list by an enormous amount. Clayton Kershaw. Clayton Kershaw has had this narrative that he's not a postseason performer. He's choked a lot of big games. He's been the Falcons of the MLB.
100%.
And he's been in situations where they looked at him and they've had legacy games on the line, and he's blown it.
Mm-hmm.
So if he does that again, especially this year, we have to question his credibility and where he really stands in the MLB history.
Regular season, one of the best.
He's Peyton Manning.
Yeah.
Peyton Manning.
We'll see what
A lot of what you saw from Peyton Manning was
regular season,
like rugged success during the regular season, and then once you got to the postseason, he tended to lay an egg. So that tops off my list.
Mm-hmm. Moving on to the NFL, I know we have a list of 10, but let's say we narrow it down to maybe 3 or 5.
Okay.
Let's see. Number 1, So players that have underperformed through week 3. Number one, I had Joe Mixon. Now, my list is pretty. I like your list how you had like strategically put. I didn't really do that. I'll do that next week. But I'm just gonna kind of list some guys that I feel underperformed. So I'm gonna go Joe Mixon. I know, especially in fantasy football, he was sometimes in the first round of some drafts, sometimes more likely in the second round. He hasn't even had a game over 100 total yards this year. So he's got to do something to overperform or to perform itself.
Yeah, a lot of guys have Joe Mixon high up on their list, and I haven't really seen anything to back up that statement.
Exactly.
I don't really know what he did to gain that sort of credibility.
I think the only
something's missing.
The only thing I would say is even last year he was terrible at the beginning of the season. Then he somehow finished with like 1,400 rushing yards, because he had in the last like 5 games of the regular season he went off. So I think maybe it's a pattern. Maybe he's a slow starter and a strong finisher. So we'll see. Another Bengal, AJ Green. You thought, me personally, I thought with Joe Burrow, he's got a legit. I don't know. He's got a legit quarterback. I know he's a rookie, but Burrow's gonna be good. So I thought he's been getting targets, but he hasn't really been getting yards. So I've been a little disappointed with him. I've always been a fan of AJ Green. He's been battling with injuries, but I thought he was having a good year this year. And through week 3, he's been a pedestrian pretty much. He hasn't been the caliber of player he has.
Right.
And then I'm just gonna say a third one. I'm gonna go with Gronk. I know he sat out last year, retired. The first 2 weeks, 2 catches, and I think he had 0 catches in the second game. He had a good week 3, which I think will be more of him coming the rest of the season. But through week 3, I think people are high on him. I wasn't necessarily high on him, but I thought he'd be a pretty good tight end this year. But I don't think he has underperformed through 3 weeks so far. That was my top 3.
Okay. I'll take part 3 too. I might because there's a couple right here that I think I have to touch on. One of them being Lamar Jackson. Reigning league MVP. You guys are supposed to be in Super Bowl last year. You lost in the first round. You had the first 2 good games. Week 2 through week 2, you looked like your MVP self, but that's because you were playing really, really subpar teams. Come Chiefs, you have 97 passing yards. Couldn't even break 100. No touchdowns. All of it came on the ground. Where do you really want to be? Where do you really want to bring that franchise? Where do you really think that franchise is going to end up? With you keep dropping big games like this, because it all falls on your shoulders, because you're the MVP, you're one of the faces of the league. You gotta deliver. Speaking of faces of the league, OBJ. Again, we expected so much out of him from this offense, and he has done nothing. I don't know if it's been play calling, if it's been Baker, or if it's just flat out been him.
He needs out of Cleveland.
He needs out immediately.
He's not even considered talent-wise, yes, but like when you think of top 5, even top 10, he's like if you don't have OBJ in it, it's like, yeah, he hasn't really done anything to prove you that.
Right. So I think OBJ, this was a guy that we were talking about as one of the transcendent talents of the league when he was in the Giants. And then once the move happened, everything went downhill. So I don't really know what happened. I have AJ Green as well on my list for the same reasons as you did. Another person that we have to touch on, Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins has been terrible through 3 weeks. And a team that had a playoff win last year. They had a playoff win. They were contending. And they're paying you all this money, Kirk. They're not paying you to turn the ball over. But you seem to have taken it that way this year.
Tell you what, if they keep losing, he's going to be out of a job, and I think either one of these perennial quarterbacks coming in next year's draft are going to be on the Vikings next year.
Yep. Yeah, I totally see that. And then I'll get my top 2 here and top it off. Drew Brees at number 2 here.
Good point.
I have Drew Brees. He can't throw the ball down the field anymore. Even with Michael Thomas there, he can't really move the ball or get the ball through the air more than 20 yards. Which is why you've seen so much, or not so much of, but you see Taysom Hill, the deep balls that they throw are coming from Taysom Hill. They're not coming from Drew Brees. So I think eventually you're going to see Drew Brees. I think at the end of this year, I think you're seeing the end of Drew Brees. I think this is kind of the latter half of what looks like the end for him moving forward. And he's not winning games either. He's not winning games. The Saints are 1-2. They shouldn't have lost the Raiders on Monday Night Football. There was just he's throwing up not very good numbers.
What I want to know is, say they need a touchdown, they need a Hail Mary. Do they put Taysom Hill in?
Do they put Taysom Hill in? Do you put Jameis Winston in?
Or yeah, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, they have Jameis.
Like, that's a tough position to be in.
Yeah, when you have that position too, as a starting quarterback, you tend to rely on your starting quarterback.
Yeah. That's really interesting. If that comes to be, what they would do.
It's unfortunate because Drew Brees is such a well-known, happy-go-lucky guy.
Yeah.
Like
He's had a great career.
yeah, he's an all-time QB, all-time QB.
Every record in the book almost.
Yeah, and yet we see him sort of Father Time's knocking on the door.
Yeah.
So, and then at number 1, I have Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson is 0-3 this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that it's a team game, but a lot of games fall on the quarterback in the NFL. So, that being said, you have to deliver. You have to deliver. I know they got rid of your favorite target. I know that they got rid of Lamar Miller. I know that you have a relatively new team and your coach is bad, but you are looked at as a top 5 quarterback. And you're not playing like it. You were terrible on the opening night. You haven't done anything really notable to this point other than lose the season. So we need to see that talent that we saw your rookie year and your second year for him to really get off this list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I can't argue with any of those players. So I think our last segment of the day, our sports politics segment. You want to explain that?
So sports politics is similar to those of you who watch Scott Van Pelt know about his one big thing. So he talks about a lot of topics, a lot of news that goes around that are kind of outside of the game. So we wanted to have a little twist on that and put our takes on I rest my take, and kind of throw that into fruition. So I'll let you.
Okay. So my idea was I'm going to talk about a little bit about the NBA awards and how that kind of turned out to be. So I'm going to start with the MVP race. So for me, Giannis, in terms of, I don't like that the MVP is obviously a regular season trophy. I wish it was, but yeah, actually you can't say that because I guess that's for the finals MVP. But regular season MVP, I think Giannis deserved MVP. But I feel like when people say he's the best player in the league, I just can't get behind that. Especially in the playoffs, he can't shoot. That's always been a big thing for me. I think LeBron is still the best player in the NBA. Actually, well, Anthony Davis is actually looking like he is now, but I would still take LeBron 10 times out of 10. So I had a problem with that. Number 2, I want to talk about a little bit the most improved player spot. So I know Brandon Ingram got it, who deserved it. He was very good this year. Of the finalists, I think Bam should have gotten more than him. He increased his scoring more than him, and he was the better overall player. But I think that in the finalist part, the fact that Devontae Graham didn't get a single vote, he wasn't in the top 3, is beside me. I don't know the exact stats, but I think he averaged 4 points last year. He was up to 16 maybe this year. Most improved, I would say. He even should have won it.
Right.
He's not the best player of the 2 I just mentioned, but in terms of most improved, you can't fault him.
Right.
And then the last kind of part I want to talk about was the MVP or the NBA first, second, and third teams. So the format is 2 guards, 2 forwards, and a center. So I think I have a problem with that because I want it to be the top 5 players. So granted, the first team I believe was the top 5 players that played this year. It was LeBron, Giannis, Harden, Davis, and Luka. I believe that was the top 5 players this year. But when you look at the second team, the third team, the center part comes into play because the second team, Jokic, Nikola Jokic was amazing, but there has to be a center. I mean, Anthony Davis is a mix of a power forward center, but it has to be a center, and it takes away from guys like the guards. Like I know, like Chris Middleton had a great year this year, and he had more votes than a lot of the forwards or a lot of the guards. But since he's a forward, he couldn't get on it.
Mm.
So I think that's just something that the NBA should take into consideration. How maybe it should be the top 15 players in that season instead of like position ranking, because NBA is a positionless game right now.
Right.
So that's just kind of something that I had a problem with, something I want to talk about.
Gotcha. Yeah, I totally agree. I think Joel Embiid getting left off All-NBA team is incredible.
Mm.
I think Rudy Gobert making an All-NBA team is incredible. There's a lot. It made me question a lot about who votes for it.
I was trying to mention that, yeah.
That was something that was just mind-boggling.
Right.
Mine, I'm gonna get a little kind of political, but not really in a sense too. So, obviously, this is a little far removed of a news story. The Steve Nash hiring. Somebody needs to put respect on Steve Nash's name. If we can add the soundbite from Kyrie Irving's comments yesterday and Stephen A. Smith's comments earlier, I would find a way to do that. But basically, so I'll start with what Kyrie said. Kyrie was talking about how him and Katie could be the coach. He said, we're not going to have some guy come in and try to tell us what to do right off the bat and have us running and this and that. And I was just like, Kyrie, you're a release and a rape allegation away from becoming AB of
Tony
the NBA.
Brown.
Yeah, Antonio Brown, of just being outed because you don't know when to shut up.
Yeah.
So with that being said, just butt out and be a player. And like I get trying to be like all like LeBron James-esque, but stop. You can't be LeBron James. I know you played with him. Stop it. But we're not here to talk about that. We're not really here to talk about that. I'm not going to really go into depth about Kyrie Irving. This is about Steve Nash. Stephen A. Smith said a couple weeks ago when Steve Nash hiring happened that Steve Nash hiring was white privilege, and Stephen A. Smith is a hero of mine. He talks sports for a living for $5 million a year. That is what I want to do in my life. He's one of the best TV personalities we have right now. He's must-watch sports media television.
Couldn't agree more.
He's the face of sports media right now. This is something that I couldn't get behind for him for a couple reasons. One being, he's had to backpedal out of a lot of situations in the past year or so that he's been deflecting for people, like for black people to really stand up for what they like. He's had such critical comments of Colin Kaepernick, such critical comments of Eric Reed, but now you want to play the race card when on a hiring that makes a lot of sense on paper, and your points just don't really stand, Stephen A. He said that like he took opportunities away from black coaches, that he has no coaching experience. First of all, a lot of NBA coaches happen to be players, and they don't really start on coaching staffs like you see with Tim Duncan and Greg Popovich. They come in as a head coach.
Right after they retire. Yeah.
Yep. Some of those names include Doc Rivers,
Mm-hmm.
Jason Kidd, Derek Fisher, Mark Jackson. All black are all people that associate with the black community. Jason Kidd kind of like I don't really know what he's white, but he was a former player. But Doc Rivers, Derek Fisher, Mark Jackson all identify with the black community, all had no experience, and all were hired because they were guards in the NBA on high profile teams. Steve Nash has a better resume than all of them. Steve Nash is a 2-time MVP. He's on the all-time assist leaderboard. He is the last person from Santa Clara to be drafted in the NBA. He was the last pro to come out of Santa Clara. He built everything that he earned in his career, he had to grind for, and he had to figure out a Mike D'Antoni offense and he was really the last person to make the Suns relevant.
Mhm.
Yep. And so you're gonna take that away from him because I know in 2020 there's a lot of race sensitive things. I understand that, and I'm all for the Black Lives Matter movement. I'm all for the movements of surrounding the Black community right now. I'm all for police reform for the Black community. I'm all for all of that. This is not the time to pull that card. This is not the time to try to make it into something that it's not. Steve Nash was just a consultant on the playoff coaching staff for the Warriors last year. He built a great relationship with KD. KD has raved about him, and they brought him in for that reason. So for them to just take away all Steve Nash's credibility because of a race issue, because of Kyrie Irving saying things that he knows he shouldn't be saying, but he knows better than, and then to twist it into the media portraying him as this kind of like disruptive personality in the locker room, you are that, Kyrie. Own up to it. Steve Nash deserves a shot. And the sooner that everyone else accepts that, and accepts that he is a good fit to be a coach, the sooner that we can kind of get past all this kind of background noise. Because I don't know what this stemmed from or why Steve Nash was put into this category, but Steve Nash deserves better. Steve Nash deserves our respect, and he deserves a chance. And I think that was just greatly blown out of proportion.
Very good points.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
So that pretty much wraps up our show. That wraps up our first episode. Obviously, there's going to be some kinks in there and some things that we're gonna tweak and to kind of
For
move
future
around
reference.
for the future. This is kind of the first episode. This is a pilot, pretty much. But we hope you guys enjoyed. We hope you watched two guys who have known each other for over a decade, pretty much, talk sports with you guys, and let us know what you think. Follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, all that. We hope you enjoy the podcast.
Yeah, shout out VIC Radio for giving us a chance and allowing us to use our platform. So yeah, thank you and stay tuned.